It's been a minute since I've read a really good mystery, and the book we're going to talk about today, The Devil in Oxford by Jess Armstrong, is a Ruby Vaughan mystery. Now, this is the first Ruby Vaughan mystery I've read. I think this is the third or fourth Ruby Vaughan mystery. I'm not 100% sure. But I picked this one up. I read the synopsis. It sounded pretty, like, right up my alley because it talks about old, rare, ancient books, stuff that has to do with the occult and arcane knowledge and all stuff along that vein that I'm kind of into. And so you get into the story. Ruby, she works for this guy, Mr. Owen, and they have this like rare bookstore that they bring in strange texts and stuff. Sometimes those are of an illegal nature and it gets them into trouble. But for now, Ruby just wants to take a step back and just relax. And so one night, Mr. Owens invites her to go to this event for this guy who is, his name's Julius Harker. And this guy has a museum of curiosities, and a lot of people kind of like discard him. And apparently something had happened when he was working at this university where he was kicked out on his butt because he supposedly took something that didn't belong to him and he got in a bunch of trouble. So he is a disgraced scholar. And some of the stuff in the museum is just like kitschy BS stuff, but there might be some actual real artifacts there. And so he's having this event that like all the university people and people of the town and the antiquities societies are going to come see just because, well, they like to gossip and they like all the drama of all the BS and whatnot. And so he's supposed to be showcasing some stuff that came from Egypt that was like this lost Napoleonic cache and whatnot. And so Ruby's like, okay, I'll go. And so she goes with Mr. Owen. And when they get there, the night takes a bloody turn and the body of Julius Harker is found inside of this like funerary box from the Egyptian artifacts that they had. So somebody killed him, and it seemed like he'd been in there for a couple days, and Ruby had like gone up there to see what was going on, and it seems like his tongue was also removed. So what is the killer trying to say with this? And so this sets her off on like a weird messed up journey, and then she runs into also this man, Ruin Rivel, who is a witch or a Pilar, and she had been in love with him, but then she kind of cut off the relationship, and so he comes back into her life. Also, he can kind of read her thoughts, so that was a bit disturbing to her. So there's a little bit of like supernatural stuff going on in this too. And then you find out that like this Julius Harker dude, he was into like occult stuff and maybe had some beliefs in things of a magical nature and that sort. And like he was also in dire straits with his financials. So he was maybe trying to make money in some seedier ways and had some connections to people that weren't the greatest. But also like he had just kind of stepped on a lot of people's toes, maybe that he had felt wronged by, and also like, rubbed their noses and stuff, or discredited some of these other people who had collections of antiquities and this, that, and the other. So like the possibility for who killed this guy could be like a lot of people. And then you have Ruby, her friend Leona, works with this other professor, Frederick Reaver, who's like super suspicious as well because him and Harker were kind of like rivals, and I guess they used to be friends back in the day, and Leona has some like weird connections to all this. And so you're trying to figure out what's going on, and then, Ruby's like, all right, well, I wasn't gonna investigate this or get pulled into anything, but it looks like she's going to be. And then Ruin as well is gonna come along with her, even though he didn't want to either. And, they both kind of like, she's trying to deny her feelings for him. And so that you have a little bit of that romance stuff going on on the side. And like in this weird world of antiquities and studies from Egypt, artifacts and occult whisperings and like what was going on behind the scenes. And so, at some point they break into the museum and they go in the basement and they find like a bunch of stuff with these canopic jars, like white powder that they're not quite sure what it is. Like if it's some sort of like preserving agent or something else. But then they find like the tongue in the jar and they're like, that still doesn't really tell them who did it. And so they follow the different clues along the way. And then it seems like, oh, hey, maybe like the police are involved in this because they're just trying to like pin it on the Harker's accountant or whoever it was. Was it his accountant? His partner, maybe his business partner. They tried to like pin it on him. And so the cops just kind of like wanted to have it like be cut and dry, but it wasn't so cut and dry because it seems like there's all these weird things going on behind the scenes. So, who's pulling the strings? Who did this? That is the question. Is it, did the cops have involvement? Is this Frederick Reaver, who was his like number one rival or whatever? He was supposed to go do a talk that was something connected with Frederick Reaver, and then he didn't. And so they're like, oh, well, he snubbed him. And then, like, is the animosity between those two big enough that Reaver could have killed him? Is Reaver just too much of an obvious person, like a red herring for this? You know, was I able to guess who it was up until the end? No, I had no idea. It takes a lot of like nice twists and turns, and I thought it was a captivating read. It had a lot of weird stuff in it, so that pulled me in. The characters were well written. I thought the mystery of it and the story was well fleshed out. I enjoyed my time in the pages. It did take me a little bit to get into it, but once I would say about, let's go 60 pages in, that I was hooked and I wanted to know what was happening. I was invested in the story, but it did take me a little bit. Sometimes I feel like that happens in mystery books for whatever reason. I don't know if it comes from just reading a lot of like horror and fantasy and not reading as many mysteries, and how like a lot of horror or fantasy start out real like sometimes hit the ground running, or just they pull you in with real weird or dark stuff. And so like as you're slowly fed into the murder mystery, I don't know what it is. But I like this one quite a bit, and I would definitely read more Ruby Vaughn mysteries in the future. So yeah, kept me guessing, kept me on my toes. So if any of that sounds good to you, if you like murder mysteries, if you like them a little weirder, that have to do with stuff that is a little paranormal, a little bit occultish, stuff that has to do with like ancient Egypt, then The Devil in Oxford might just be for you. If you enjoyed hanging out today, hit that subscribe button, come back, see me again, and we'll talk about more bookish things and weird stuff.